Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Behind Massive Screens, a game development podcast here from Massive Entertainment in Malmö, Sweden. My name's Dóri and I'm joined here by two wonderful guests, my co-workers who have hand-plucked from the office to learn a little bit more about, their job titles and them themselves, their journey through the industry and how they came to be here at Massive. So let's start off with some short introductions, your name, job title, and a short little introduction of what that job entails. Brenda?
Hi, I'm Brenda. I'm a lead concept artist at Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Mainly my job is managing concept artists, and also make sure that the visual direction is going to the right point. And I'm more of a bridge person who helps to connect concept team to other departments, since concept team is a very hub of game development. So yeah, that is more of my job.
Yeah.
And I am Océane, and I work as an associate lead character artist, also on the Avatar Frontiers of Pandora project. And similar to Brenda, I sort of connect the teams as a lead. I make sure that all the artists under me have the tools they need in order to work. So I'm sort of just making sure that everyone is enabled to do their job so that we have a game. And yeah, also I do some hands-on work to sort of like stay in touch with what's happening in the industry and so on. But yeah, I work as a bridge. I work with the team, make sure that they have everything they need and so on.
Awesome. And we're going to dive deeper into what exactly that entails. But first, I want to learn a little bit more about the two of you. So, I mean, this is a question that we always ask here on Behind Massive Screens, because finding out how people got into the industry, where they've been, and how they came to be here at Massive it's always a different answer and always a very interesting one. So I was wondering if we start again with you, Brenda, how did you get into the game industry?
So since I was young, I was always interested in art, and that eventually drove me to go to this fine art school in New York. And after graduating, and I worked at some gallery for about a year, and then I was so bored, and it honestly didn't bring me any money. And then that's when I found this video from YouTube of Feng Zhu talking about this concept art and what it is basically. So that actually drove me to apply for that school. I got in. So I had very intense 1 year of learning what concept art is. And it's very different from fine art because it's more in the commercial area. It's more about industry design. So yeah, that's what I did. And then after that, I start getting job in Korea, which is basically I had to go home and where I came from. So I started working at VFX companies in Korea, and it was super intense, I would say. And film industry is somewhere that you can try out different types or more variety of concepts. So because in the film, they always look for something new rather than like games. That's it has a very different formula of how they make money as well. So I worked there for about 4 years. It had terrible work-life balance to start with, but it was fun. But after that, I eventually realized that I didn't have much control over the whole production pipeline, except the beginning of a part, because they have a very different way of how they take concept and then eventually ends up in the screen. So so that's when I decided to take about a year off. I was just freelancing, but also making portfolio on the side, and then applied to Massive, and they liked me, so I got in. First, I got into Division's vanity team because they were missing artists there, so I helped a lot with the gears and weapon skins and whatnot. And then after that, I got into Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, and now I'm here as lead. It's been about a year and 8 months or something that I've been a lead here. So that's been my journey.
And for me, similar to Brenda, I loved art as a kid. I remember in kindergarten, I would have a kindergarten teacher, she would always draw butterflies, and I was so amazed. I would always ask her to draw something, and I would fill it in, and I would also try to draw. And we had a Nintendo 64 game console growing up, and my parents would play a lot of games. And I was so mesmerized by the games. Also,
Good parents.
yeah, really good. And also back then you would have like guidebooks, handbooks on how to proceed in the game, and they would illustrate a lot of concept art, and like they would make the progression of the story into stories, telling them in tales and stuff. And I was so mesmerized, and I kept reading, and I wanted to like draw the characters that I saw in the illustrations, and also everything I saw in the games. I was like, oh, this is so cool. And I kept drawing the characters. And I mean, I never really had a good PC growing up, so it was always mainly console games that I was fascinated by. I mean, our home PC could barely play. We in Sweden, at least, you would sometimes get games in cereal boxes.
Oh yeah.
You would get like this CD and like, oh my god, this is so cool. And I would pop it into the computer. It couldn't run the game. It couldn't even play the cereal games. So I would always go back to playing console games or watch movies, series. So I kind of looked like both movies and games. I didn't know there was like a profession for this, because I don't know, you're a kid, you don't know what kind of jobs are out there. You know, there are firemen, but you never hear about artists. But as I grew older, I mean, I heard about eventually where I reached the age of like 16 plus, and you're applying for, in Sweden, it's called gymnasium. It's upper secondary school. I wanted to study something broad because I still didn't really know about the industry and what kind of jobs you could get. So I studied engineering, but it had like a bit of, it was called digital production, I believe. So we still had Maya courses. We had animation courses. We had film. Also film history and how to write scripts, but also like engineering and a lot of math and physics and so on. So I got a little bit of everything.
Basically a class called everything.
Everything. So that I felt like in case I went for something arts, it would feel harder to maybe apply for certain like universities and so on. And also my dad, I wanted to make my dad proud because he was an engineer. So I was like, okay, this sounds pretty cool. And I met a lot of cool teachers there. And then my love for 3D modeling and concept art really grew there, because I got to try out different modeling softwares like Maya, ZBrush, and so on. And eventually, when I graduated, I found out about different schools that would help you on your journey on becoming a game developer.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm very impressed with here in Sweden. There are so many schools with like dedicated focus, and like the one here in Malmö, the game.
The Game Assembly.
Game Assembly.
Yes.
I was going to say collective, but I knew it was wrong. The Game Assembly, which basically just starts a mini production.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get to there because I actually.
Sorry, I'm skipping ahead.
So yeah, it's quite interesting because the game industry is very big in Sweden, and I had no clue. I was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna go for maybe the film industry, because I heard more about film schools like Vancouver Film School and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, or like the animation workshop in Denmark. Like, I guess there's no school for me in Sweden. I'm gonna have to apply abroad and pay a lot of tuition fees and so on. And then like, wait a minute, like my mom is awesome, and she found the Game Assembly in a pamphlet about different vocational educations, and I'm like, wait, that looks really cool. We should go to open house. And it's in Malmö. I haven't been in Malmö. Let's check it out. And I was so amazed. I mean, basically what you do there is so I studied there's a course called game art. There's one called programming. There was level design. Now I think there's much more. There's animation. There's tech art and so on. Probably more. But also what you do is you get grouped with these other disciplines and you get to create games. I think it's like 8 or 10 games in 2 years, which is crazy.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and it's a good like way of getting into the industry because what you need is some sort of like collaborative background. Also understanding other disciplines and not only like narrow yourself into one thing, like I'm gonna only do this, but you have to broaden your skill set. You have to do like concept art. You have to try creating 3D models. You have to do 3D environments and 3D characters and props and understand those pipelines and test different engines, also engines that the programmers would create. And on top of that, animation, rigging, everything.
Yeah, I think it's such a smart approach because ever since starting here at Massive and doing these podcasts, I always knew AAA game development was big. I mean, it's in the name, it's AAA. But the amount of people and the amount of job titles and how they all work together, and yes, specializations, but the communication between is constant, and just learning something in a silo of like, oh, this is how I do this.
Yeah.
Is less helpful than if you already learn how to do it in combination with where it needs to go, and you know how to deliver to them what they need to continue.
It's super crucial. It's like a whole spine. It's like you can't just be a single piece. You need to connect with the other ones in order to function. And so I was like, wow, this is so cool. I want to do it right now. But there is a big but. There was a lot of older people there, like maybe late 20s, 30-year-old. And I was just fresh out of gymnasium. And I was like, oh, I need to work on a portfolio. And the bar is pretty high, probably. I got some help from some alumni students from there. I'm like, okay, what should I include in my portfolio? Great. So the following year from graduating from gymnasium, I was working on my portfolio. At the same time, I was also studying Japanese because that's another hobby of mine. I love animated films and so on. So it's like, yes, I can do this, but it's super intense. So if you want to take a sabbatical, don't study something intense like Japanese. But it was really fun. So I worked on my portfolio during that year, and I actually got in the following year. So I started at the Game Assembly as a game artist, and from there on, I got an internship at a Danish game company called I Interactive. And I went straight into production for Hitman 2. It was extremely intense because the window of development for that game was very limited. So the production timeline was like, okay, here is a list of characters. Please deliver them within the year, kind of. So I had like just a few days to create something. But it was a fun learning experience. And now I'm at Massive, and I started as a junior, and it's crazy. I've been here for over 5 years now. And now in my current role, I'm an associate lead character artist. And it feels very different from the start. It's been a big learning curve, but I love it.
Awesome. and that brings us up to date, both here at Massive, and that means I want to start talking about what you kind of do day to day. So, and I know I've come to learn this can be a difficult question to answer based on where the project is in development. But let's assume that it's past pre-production. No, actually, since we're talking about concept, let's start at the very beginning. Brenda, talk to me a little bit about what your day-to-day is starting off in a project?
Yeah, so day to day, I usually start with the stand-ups, and it's either we have our character bubble stand-up, which is like a collaborative collection of people from different department, but they're all gonna work on this characters. So I either have that stand-up or we have our concept in stand-up, and that's basically where we try to share day-to-day work of what we're gonna do, and kind of updating each other. And yeah, if there's any question or any problem or any blockers, then we can just share it and help each other. Other than that, for me, I always try to take kind of 50-50 on craft and management. So half a day is usually spent on some type of new concept, or if there's anything to help out in visual problem solving type of thing. Otherwise, I'll be helping out rest of our teams. So day-to-day artists will encounter different types of problems, or we'll get some type of a new concept request, or we'll have some type of discussions that we have to do to solve a concept that goes onto productions. And often we get feedback from art directors or Lightstorm, because that's main company that we work with. So yeah, I think it's combination of those aspects. And big part of my job is basically connecting different teams in a very smooth way, because I think that's one of the part that we often miss out in the production. And yeah, I think it's very crucial for managers to be very aware of what's going on in the team, but also be able to share that with other team and make sure that everyone's on the same page. So, for example, we make something and then the other team wasn't aware that this character is in a certain way, or we made changes and then they weren't aware that there was going to be changes, and this actually required some technical problem, and that actually needed more time for it. And so to prevent those problems that we might have later on, we try to make sure that first part, I have to be very aware of those things, and it's more like daily communication that I try to keep track on. But other than that, I think it's boring stuff. Filling out Jira, checking artists, did you finish your concept? So yeah, those are the rest.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I guess, yeah, as you said, depending on where we are in the timeline, if it's pre-production, we're maybe not as involved. It might be that concept art is like, hey, we got a concept. Well, what do you guys think? And we like sort of gather. We have maybe like a workshop where we all go through like, okay, so this is the character, this is the background. And then we sit down, the character team and the technical animation team and maybe other disciplines, or they're called in later. And we look at the character and we're like, okay, so how does this translate into a game character? Because eventually that's what the players are gonna see. That's what I make. We make the characters that the players are gonna see in the game eventually. So we need to make sure that the concept translates well into the game we're making. So yeah, we might have like a brief on like, so for these reasons they might work or not. And then also technical animation, who's more responsible of rigging or setting up certain constraints or so on for the character, and what they're wearing might be like, I'm gonna flag this issue with the skirt because it wouldn't behave well unless we put maybe slits on the side of it, and it can nicely like move around the legs and so on. But yeah, like starting off the day, I sit in the same stand-up as Brenda. We call it the character bubble stand-up. And as she mentioned, it's like hub of different disciplines where who collaborate on like a weekly or daily basis. So it's everything from concept team to character team to technical animation, sometimes also animation, technical art, and then the list could just go on. But sort of like those people are around.
How big is that meeting room?
Yeah, we just sometimes we have only 1 or 2 people from a discipline designated to ours. So it might be that maybe the audio team has a person that checks in on these stand-ups like once or twice a week to like sort of get an idea what we're doing, so that they're not like, oh, so what is the character team up to? Oh, let's just join the stand-up and see. And they can ask any questions or raise any concerns. So like, oh, I have a blocker, so you bring it up during that time.
Yeah.
You sort of say like, oh, yesterday I did this, today I'm working on this, and I might have some blockers, and then you can together sort of try to figure out like how to move on.
It's been super effective since we started that type of like a regular point that everyone can come and just discuss or hear things, because that's what's been missing a lot.
Yeah,
and it's super crucial for other teams to be aware of what the other teams are working on.
Yeah, but it's sometimes a hard balance of like, oh, how much are you gonna work in a silo? But also, how much time can this stand-up also take away from your day? Like, let's limit it to only say certain things like, okay, what am I doing today? And if I have any blockers, like, please raise it, and then we can like form some kind of meeting afterwards.
You might maybe mention you're not going to focus on what we're going to be working on a month from now.
No, exactly.
That's next month's meeting.
Yeah, exactly. It's I mean, in game development, you have to look at your day-to-day basis, but as a lead, especially, we have to also like look in what's going to happen far in advance from here, because we are sort of the ones that have to make sure that there's not going to be any issues, bumps along the way. So we have to be like proactive and be like, oh, I think it's better that we start on this asset now, because cinematic team is gonna work on certain scenes where they're gonna use this character, and it would be good if they have it realized to a certain point, and so on. Because we're sort of a lot of other disciplines are so dependent on what we're doing,
of course,
that we have to really be super proactive and think in advance on like, okay, how are we gonna strategize our coming weeks? We work in sprints, like 2-week sprints. So like, okay, the next 2 weeks, what should we be doing in order to also cater to the other disciplines and make sure that we're not blocking anyone, and also that they get to work on something at the level of quality that they would like to at a certain point of time.
Fascinating. I keep reminding myself in the middle of these podcasts just how awesome it is to be doing these podcasts, because this is something that I've been like interested in for years, covering games, and it's just the level of intricacy keeps on surprising me of how layered and how like a spider web it is to come together. But I want to talk a little bit about your two disciplines, and since we are focusing on characters as well, of course. So where does concept and character art kind of meet, if you will? If you take it from the concept side to begin with.
So we usually start with the brief from narrative team. And based on the brief, we start trying to gather a lot of references, because a lot of a very big part of our game has to be based on this logic, basically.
I think they keep saying it's not science fiction, it's science fact.
So like, from the world to the clans to the character, I think everything was very well structured to fit, to be grounded and realistic. And from that point, we start sculpting this character of who they will be. And if we talk about like probably like individual characters, let's say, it usually start with which clan did they come from, what's their background, what's their personality, and that would basically drive the whole visual aspects of, okay, what type of clothing would they be wearing? Do they hold any elements like sword or spear?
What resources in their environment do they have to
exactly
make their clothes?
And then based from that process, there's a lot of research on real life examples. If they come from a certain clan that's nomadic, we try to look up actual nomadic people of their lifestyle. So after having all the information, we start with this variations of sketches of what this person could look, or Navi could look like.
And you also compile guidelines or style guides for yourself and other disciplines to understand the world.
Definitely. Yeah. So because it has to fit in this Pandora, basically,
and be consistent.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a whole process of finding the right type of a frame to form to the point that artists now have 20% of freedom, artistic freedom to explore. So once we have those type of ideas, we start sketching it out. Sometimes they render it out. And anything that will visually sell the design really well, we'll put a lot of effort there. And then, of course, we have conversation with Lightstorm. So they also check what the brief is and what this character could be. And then often they give us a lot of questions about is it still realistic enough? Is it grounded enough? And what was the idea behind this character looking like this? And maybe this garment doesn't look as close to the clan that they usually wear. So we have to solve a lot of those different problems there. And then once we have something that's pretty much set to stone, that's when we start collaborating with the character team. So we try to share a lot of those points where it might have technical problems or blockers. So that's when you get a lot of feedback from character team, and sometimes say, we can't have a cape, or we can't have something that's swinging. The hair is too long. So all sorts of aspects. And so we try to either sometimes push that line. But this character must have this, or this is the VHQ, which is
it's essential for the clan, or like for the Navi.
Exactly.
Because I think something that they struggled a lot with was they have a kuru, which is like the long braid. They also have a tail, which is also very long and moving. And everything might be intersecting, if not set up correctly. It has to behave naturally, like the tail has to still move like a natural tail. But you also want to wear certain outfits that a Navi would wear. And that would also be something like capes or loincloths. So it's a lot of cloth movements on top of all these other moving parts, which a human body wouldn't have normally.
So I think we have to do a lot of back and forth sometimes. And then this is a bit complex stage because we also involve Lightstorm. And so that's when we try to do the push and pull of a line. And I think that's when also producers come in and they have to decide based on the budget. So yes, we can do it. No, we can't do it. And then once we have sort of a finished final concept image of the character, that's when we start production concept. So that's when we do front, side view, back view. And if there's any hidden pouch or whatever they're wearing that's not in the image, then we try to make extra call out for it. Any materials, textures, if there's any real life reference, there's ropes, but you can make exactly like this because we already have photos of these ropes. So any visual guidance that will explain when you move to the 3D production that these people don't necessarily always run back to us to ask questions. So once we have that, I think that's when it goes to character team side. And then we also have an in-between process that we have it now, which is when there is a stages of which I think you can explain eventually, but when we have a stages of what is it called, block out and high poly and texture, that's when we also try to be involved and check if it's one-to-one or if it's what we were intentionally drawn for.
It's like when you think of a concept art, I don't know if our listeners have seen concept art, but for characters, it's usually a character in an isolated space. It's usually like a neutral background so that you like give all the attention to the character.
You get the silhouette. And
yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, what's the focus point? Let's make sure that the silhouette is right for this character. So if I'm seeing these characters from a distance, like I can tell them apart from each other. So that's where the blockout comes in. And we try to do it very early on. It could even be at a sketch phase where it's like, okay, I have an idea of what kind of garment it is, what kind of other details go on top of it. And I can make a blockout now just to pinpoint like the size of objects, the overall silhouettes, and the fit on the character, and so on. And then we can do a back and forth with the concept team, also other teams that are affected by the characters, like the animation team or technical animations. Like, oh, will you be able to rig this? Great. Okay, then we get a approval from the technical animation team. Animation's fine with it too, or like they're aware of like, okay, this character is gonna wear this kind of garments, therefore they can't have this animation where the hand is too tight to the body because they're gonna maybe have a lot of pouches or other things in that area.
Yeah, so it doesn't clash your clip.
Exactly, especially for the primary characters. Those are the main characters of the game. They are characters like Atua or even like the player character. But in those cases, since for these characters, they have to go to mocap studios. We even, if they're using a tool, we need to give all the dimensions of the tool so they're aware of what they're holding, how big it is. Sometimes they even like try to replicate it so that they have a real feel for what they're doing.
Yeah, to also, I guess, give the actor, inspiration for their performance.
Exactly,
they know what they're holding.
Exactly, and we try to like communicate as much as possible so that the actors are aware of what the character might look like in the end. So yeah, this is like we're establishing in the blockout phase. We're establishing like sort of the silhouette and so on. And then with the concept team, we iterate together. Even sometimes the concept team would do another paint over on top of the blockouts because you can get more angles from a 3D model. It's much easier than like having to imagine what it looks like from side view or back view, and it also works as a good visual aid for everyone. Maybe due to certain technical constraints, we couldn't do any certain details exactly like the concept. So therefore, the concept artist can also iterate from that 3D model as a.
It's like finding the midpoint between us that, okay, I can compensate this to be slightly different, but still stick to the concept most of it. Yeah.
And from there on, once that's through, we do something called high poly. That's where all the details come in. That's where we can go nuts with the geometry without anyone bothering us. No.
Without thinking of, the performance.
Exactly. That's where we can make the details, which we later bake into the low poly model. But yeah, this is also a crucial stage where we communicate with the concept team because also for us, Lightstorm is also involved in this point of time. They approve the high poly models. And it's also working with the Avatar IP the outfits are so beautiful.
Yeah.
But so intricate. It's a very different workflow from other game projects that I've been on. And it's really fun to work on, but it was crazy to wrap your head around starting out. When we were in late pre-production, we were just trying to work out what kind of workflow are we going to have for this project because it could go either way. And since it is like a AAA, very highly realistic, but also fantasy-like in like the beauty of the world of Pandora, and the outfits are so intricate. You just keep zooming in, and there's detail upon details.
More and more.
It's so detailed.
It's so detailed.
And then there was a bit of a different perspective of how game company works and how film company works, because for them, everything had to match 1-to-1 because they weren't fully aware of our technical restrictions or any constraint we had. So there were often the times that we had to send some document explaining why this can't be a certain way, even the concept was designed, I don't know, have like long hair or cape, and then, we can't do it, and then they just couldn't understand. But yeah, especially at the high poly stage, it's very different from other type of a game, because I don't think I would have cared about how the folds are, for example, or how the trims of a t-shirt is if we're just making regular t-shirt. Yeah. But then here we have to see, is this trim the type that I put in the concept? It's weaved in a different way. Can you please pick the different trims? And then I have to find either the examples, or we try to find have some set of trims in the library so we can reuse some of those. But yeah, it's definitely a new level of checking the details and trying to align on both sides.
Yeah, I don't think I've worked on a game project where I have to think about trims. I mean, we have it's a trim library. What it is, it's like all the it's like the border of any material on clothes. Like, how does the stitching look like? How does it transition to another material? It can't just be like like caveman stitched something together and then it's fine, or like it can loosely hang. No, we usually they have these kind of flax weavings. There's a lot of braiding, embroidery, and so on, connecting different materials, because that's also something that Navis have. They have a lot of different materials, a lot of ropes.
Yeah, different leather types.
Yes. Yeah, which then is also different between the different
like
clans.
That's
the word that would disappear for a second. Sorry.
No, so it's just figuring out like, okay, how do we approach this? And so the high polys turned out to be very detailed in our game, because it's hard to reach that level of quality in just material. And also, since Lightstorm wants to see it, we need to visualize it to a certain point. So we have an amazing library of different IMM brushes and so on, insert brushes for ZBrush. We have a lot of amazing tools we also use for the texturing stage. Like, you can just have a plain rope, and then our amazing material artist, Chunwei, shout out to him. He made a library of materials for substance, so that we don't have to maybe do all the different trims and so on in the high poly stage, but it maybe translates better if you just do it. And it's more iterative in the texturing stage. So we have to sort of balance, like, okay, we want a pretty detailed high poly, but we also don't want to lower the quality of the actual in-game model. So we have to also cater to the fact that we're working on a game. We're not making pretty art. We're not making pretty characters only. They need to function and look good in the game.
I like that very important word, only, because you are making amazing art. But it is in the end serving to be in game.
Exactly. And it's not a movie. We can't apply movie magic. It has to work from all the angles. You have to be able to crouch and it still looks okay from that angle. You go behind the character, there's a back view. They have details on the back too, and not only on the front. But we also have to balance, like, where do we put most of the focus on the characters. So usually when we work with the concept art and so on, we try to say, like, hey, so when I'm gonna work on this, I'm mainly gonna perhaps focus on like the face down to like the maybe upper body, torso, and then all the way waist down is less of a focus, because that's usually not the focal area. It's also a first-person game, so you're gonna see your hand a lot. So it's crucial how we create the model and how it looks from that perspective for the player. We also test in different fields of view. So it doesn't look super wonky when you like increase it or decrease it. So it's a lot of testing, a lot of making sure that the torso area, the face, especially for our cinematic framing for our like more detailed characters, the primary characters look good. And then less focus on the lower parts, but still a lot of details, more than any other games.
Yeah, I think it's all about efficiency at the end, and then balance out the budget to the point that wherever we put much effort will be seen and experienced by players. And that's why I think we try to encounter every single direction of if we are playing the game, how would it look like in players' point of view.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, because you talked a little bit about like the different classifications of characters there. Can you talk a little bit about those? Because I mean, you have story characters, and then you have the NPCs out in the world.
Yeah, we have, like I mentioned, the primary characters. Those are, we call them VHQ, very high quality characters. I think that's a very old word. Which I've only heard here at Massive, so I don't know if someone can confirm that it was like some kind of old thing they used to say. But yeah, those are the main characters. Those are the ones that would appear in cinematics, the main storyline characters. And then we have secondary characters. Those also have unique features. They have unique faces as well as the primary characters. They might share certain assets, certain clothes with the other NPCs, but they're pretty unique. And then we have something called tertiary characters. Those are sort of the background characters, the filler characters that make sure that we don't have an empty home base for the Navi.
The population.
Yes, exactly. The population. Your average Joe.
The ghosts.
Oh yeah, we have the ghosts too. It's a lot of layers, but yeah, that's in broad strokes. Those are the categories that we work with.
Yeah, and what is kind of the different approach, concepting wise, to those? Because I mean, thinking about it logically as I'm asking the question, much more detail on the very high quality main characters, and then kind of a guideline for the population.
I think most effort is it goes into a little bit more of a broader term of a design. So the thing is, for example, secondary or tertiary, we don't necessarily design those individually, but it's more designed in a way that we design the clan, and then within the clan style, we start designing gears or loincloth or whatever not, and then those secondary, tertiary characters are more the one that we use those pre-existing assets, and then we mix it up to just pump out the variations. I think concept team is more involved in the area where either individual characters has to be designed or players have to wear certain gears, and then we try to be very efficient in terms of putting where do we put the budget. So that's why we try to mix it up for secondary, tertiary instead of designing individual stuff. We do help to select them, not for the tertiary because I think they're automatically mixed up, right?
Yeah, I mean the idea is that the tertiary don't stick out too much. So you guys also make like guidelines for the secondary characters, like if they have professions, what kind of war paint would they wear, or certain attire. So we have like a little pre-selection,
like
exactly, of what they would look like.
Yeah, so it's more like putting the broader frame that artists can just take it and kind of create their own, as long as it sticks to this style guide. So yeah, that's how we're involved more. Yeah,
and I'm guessing. In addition to the style guide, of course, from a technical perspective, there needs to be a blockout on the models of how far a gear can reach, which then, of course, impacts the design of the gears. And so it kind of flows back and forth, I guess.
Yeah, that was like a big discussion in early production, pre-production of, okay, since we do have a gear system for the player, how are we going to create it? Like, how are we gonna limit the players or like make them go nuts? Like there's a certain balance, and we had very high ambition. Like, okay, let's make this really cool, because there was a big focus on crafting in our game. Since we do have all these planimals and so on that you can harvest and take materials from, we wanted that to sort of play into what your characters look like and into the different environments that you explore. So we were like, okay, let's say we have 5 slots. We have the head, we have torso, and we have arm and waist, and then we have legs. So those are the main slots. And then we need to put certain limitations. Okay, like where does another slot have to cut off in order for the other one to begin, so that they don't intersect or clip or anything inside the game. So I think that's also a crucial point where we had to do a lot of block out, and also a lot of concepts to sort of like help each other out. Like, okay, what does like arm slot look like for a Navi? Because in the movie they're not very dressed.
They're very, they don't have much of a gear coverage on their body. And then that was also another thing that we had to find a balance with Lightstorm to make sure, hey, this is a game. We need some visual aspects for players to be able to play with. They can't be just naked halfway.
Even though it is a warm climate.
Exactly. Yeah, but definitely. And on the concept side, whenever we hit that restrictions and limitations, even though we agreed upon these rules that we set up where the gear will be ending, sometimes when we create the concept, there gets to the point that we wish it was, wish we could have longer t-shirt, or this new brief will fit the gears to be a little bigger or longer, but then we have to find a solution, because that's not what we agreed on earlier. And to fit the system we have, there is always those limitations. And I think a lot of it is finding the right solution that is still visually stunning, but also fit in the brief and the idea we want you to present, but also fit the technical limitations.
Yeah. Now, I took a little peek at my notes here, and I noticed, because when we were talking about the style guide and how designed like main characters, you wanted to talk a little bit about the sisters as an example. And, well, educate me. I just have a bullet point.
Maybe I can give very rough intro about the clans and stuff, and maybe not every clan, but so basically we also have style guides for each clan, and probably people already know, but we have 3 main clans, and then also players clans, so about 4 clans, and those are the one that's designed from Massive side. So everything basically, we first have this environment style guides, which were based on the Pandora's logic, science facts, whatnot. And then basically each clans live in a very different climates. And based on those environment setup, we start creating clans. So, okay, if you live in a certain environment, how would they behave? How would they talk? How would they wear? What would they be their daily lifestyle? And then based on those, we try to make a bit of a rough category of basically what the visual language will speak about. I think one of the sister you mentioned, I think her name is Nazim. She belongs in Veld clan. Zeswa clan. And they're the one who lives in the area that's inspired from Veld area. I think one of the main aspects they have is they live in a very windy environment. It's a place is called upper plain area, and then every plants, trees and whatnot, it's kind of shaped with the wind because of how strong wind is, and it hardly stops. It stops blowing, and then their camps are also designed based on those windy aspects. So it's designed to be able to withhold the shape and don't just fly away and whatnot. And then another aspect is they're nomads. So what they do is they have a very symbiotic relationship with creature called Zakru, and it's the main creature. They get resources such as milk and its fur. They use its fur as its garment. So what Zakru does is it goes to one area and then it starts putting the tail into the soil. And if I'm wrong, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But it's a tail or the nose they put in, and then they start collecting these minerals. So that's how they consume the nutrition there. And then once they're done with that area, they start moving on to other area for finding nutritious soil again. And then that's when Zeswa clan moves with them. So that's how their lifestyle is formed. And one of the main character there is called Näsström. And do you want to talk about her?
I can talk about her.
Well.
So I actually worked on this character, amazing concept, amazing clan. I mean, big shout out to the concept team for creating these amazing clans that we have in the game. But yeah, she is the leader of the Zeswa, or the clan. So she has like a sort of a warrior attitude. She's very strong. She wields a spear. She rides in with her ikran. I think when the player encounters her, she just like swoops in on her ikran, like shoots her spear and like, okay, don't mess with this person. And she has a very
business.
like exactly. She has a very like direct language. Really cool character. And I mean, I think that her outfit and her face kind of reflects her life in the upper planes. She has this. I think she's missing an eye, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
She has these scars on her face from previous combat with the RDA. So you can understand that, okay, maybe part of her attitude comes from like the interactions she's had with the RDA and how that's affected the clan. Also, as a leader, she wants to be strong and protect her clan. And she's also, a warrior. So she has to wear like these kind of stronger platings. And in the Zeswa clan, they also have these interesting hairstyles. It kind of has this windswept look, and it's braided up. I think in most other clans, the hair is sort of like hanging loosely, flowy, like loose hanging hair. Wouldn't work in such a windy environment, as we stated. So it's braided completely so that it doesn't get in your eye. And she, like the whole silhouette has this flowy look, sort of to reflect the environment they live in.
Yeah, I think she's a very good representative of how Zeswa clans are. Tend to be very fierce because of how the lifestyle is very rough for them. A lot of them are hunters. So yeah, they like to ride those dire horses and just goes everywhere. And they have a lot of this very like passionate attitude about things. So yeah, I think she's also one of the. I mean, Zeswa clan in general was. We try to give them a lot of very edgy shapes and triangular shapes, and because usually Navis are more about flow and like a circular shapes or something more soft and harmonious feels. But they're more given of a rigid. They can be you can't mess up with them. And, that type of stuff. And we also try to reflect the material like reeds. So it's like a hard plated, almost armor like type of a gear compared to other clans. And I think the color also is pretty reflective because they're the one given like super strong red and orangish color. And that's like the main color we try to splash on. And it's very distinctively different from other two clans that, players will definitely understand their characteristic and, maybe, oh shit, I have to behave here. Maybe.
Yeah. No, the very interesting clan because they, as we stated, they're warriors. They also have this sort of capoeira like dance fight styles. You can see them dance fighting, and so the attire also needs to adapt to that. It's also, as warriors, they need to be able to go into battle.
Yeah, it needs to be sturdy, but also still not restrictive.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I mean, this kind of comes down to one of the things that I noticed a lot when I played through the game is that you can tell in an instant, like a 3-second thing. It's like, okay, this Navi is from this clan, and then you can also tell, from a long distance, just from the silhouette. Oh, that's that specific person that I'm going to talk to, because even though they are within the same style as the clan, they are still unique.
Yeah, I think
without breaking and being a thing of their own.
Especially since like our world is so full of everything. It's very. It has so much detail. It's incredible. I think when I joined, way back, I saw the game and I was like, how is this running real time? It looks amazing. How is this a video or am I actually playing this? And so, I mean, the amount of detail, the character also has to stand out from the environment. And there's so much color and things going on. And we have so many systems to make everything realistic. Everything is moving in the planes. And then you have the huge Sakru and their camps and all the animals and the planimals and the other particles happening. Also the characters. So you have to have a strong visual language to say, like, this is the character, this is the one I'm going to speak to. And I can see that immediately. And the audio team also did an amazing job so it's like an audio-visual experience. Like you can also tell by the audio, like guiding you to where you need to go. And we also have, if you're playing on specific PlayStation 5 or using a PlayStation 5 controller, you can also feel on the haptics a lot of feedback. So everything plays in really well in the game. So that's the amazing part about game development. Like even though I'm working on our area of characters, in the end, everything is going to play out so nicely because all the teams are, giving their best effort in like lighting up the character correctly and creating a space for the character, making audio around the character, the voice team on like, giving the character a voice and then also haptics and other gameplay elements ties in so well.
Yeah, it's where that big web, like I talked about before, different disciplines finally coming together, and you see the final product. And
yeah.
Like, oh yeah.
And you can still tell like what you have to do. You're not like confused and like, oh, where do I have to go? There are so many things happening.
Yeah. And there's one other thing that I want to touch on before we start wrapping up, and because the storytelling in designing a character, and you're not only, of course, designing the main characters and tertiary characters, there's also the player character. And with it being a first-person game, I wanted to talk a little bit about the song chord, because I learned about this at the preview event that I was at before the game came out, and I thought it was so interesting on how a decorative item becomes a way to show player progression.
Yeah, so so song cord is one of the items that players wears on their arm, and that you can definitely check it out in the first person view. It starts from the top to the bottom, and every time player pass certain moment of a story, you get this beads or something that kind of mark the events. So as you collect them, it's kind of showing like game progression, and also I think it's pretty cool way to remember what you've been doing, how your journey has been. And this idea originally came from, of course, from the lore of Avatar, and basically originally they wear it on their waist. So how they do is they just create from one side to the other. So they just continue adding new beads or anything that mark the events. And I think it's pretty cool way to have this, your work progress. And it's just not some, like UI type of thing. It's more like integrated in your body gear.
Yeah, where you as the player at any moment can look down and you can see, oh yeah, I have progressed this far.
Yeah.
I just want to squeeze that in because I think it's such a fascinating tidbit. But In true Behind Massive Screens fashion, we're gonna end up with if you have any tips or tricks or guidance towards those out there listening that want to get into game development and more specifically into your field.
I can start. So recently, I've been joining a lot of game jams. I think that's such a fun way of learning how to make games. And by going there, I've been in the industry for some time now. There are some people who have never done a game. There's all kinds of people with all kinds of background, and they're like, I'm just interested in game development. How can I help? So it's a great opportunity to meet other people interested in making games. And since it's such a short amount of time you have, you just like, okay, I can do something. Everyone can always provide with something. So it's a good way of understanding, like, oh, what am I interested in doing for games? Also, getting out of your comfort zone and actually like, okay, I need to do something and I need to make it quick. Someone like me being like, oh, I'm a character artist. I haven't touched other things that much. I'm the only artist here, so now I suddenly have to make the environment. I need to make the shaders and so on. So it's also a good way to explore, like, okay, I can try to do these other things.
Yeah, can I expand your toolbox?
Exactly. And more specifically, as a character artist or like 3D artist, I think there's a lot of amazing tools out there. Like a lot of good YouTube channels providing workflows, especially the different softwares like ZBrush or Substance have a lot of tutorials on how to use their tools, like latest updates. What are they going to do? There's like ZBrush Summit where experts in these crafts are going through their workflows, and of course podcasts like this one on people talking about their journey in the game industry and like different professions. So you get to explore like, aha, there is something called character art. I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't. I wish I knew that. Also, at Massive and maybe in other countries where we have like a game like hub, the industry is present. We have something called like a role model program where people from schools come visit our studio. They get a tour, and at the end, we have a little presentation from different disciplines in the teams. So I sometimes have that where I have a little presentation about I'm a character artist. What was my journey to become a character artist, and then I talk about my day-to-day job and like tips and tricks. What kind of softwares to start out with? Like I mentioned, maybe more in depth. There is a lot of good software for 3D modeling. There is Maya, 3ds Max, but very importantly, there is free software like Blender, which is great nowadays. I would highly recommend that. There is Substance Painter for texturing, this ZBrush for 3D modeling, but more like 3D sculpting, and so on. There's much more, but I think that's a good start. But yeah, going back to this kind of role model program, I think it's a great opportunity if you have the game industry present where you live, like reach out, or like if they're reaching out to your school, like make sure that's you're there.
Yeah, like networking and like constantly seeking out some information or feedbacks, and
also as I mentioned, with the game community being so big, like in Malmö, for instance, we have something called the Game Habitat, where anyone could just like attend. Like there is presentations. There's one of the game jams were hosted there. There's all kinds of meet and greets and so on going on. So it's a great opportunity, I think.
Yeah. You have anything specific to add?
Yeah, I think for concept art, definitely a lot of, I think nowadays people go for a lot of technical side too. They want to learn about bit of other departments of what they do. I think those definitely help out to like understanding the restriction to the point that you know how to find solution faster. But I think more important thing is more of a design solution in our case. And that's more thinking about how do I bring references and what do I base my concept on? And then what am I trying to solve? So, because I think a lot of people tend to miss out those parts. They can do beautiful Blender environment and they show me this image. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. But what are you trying to do here? Like, are you trying to solve are you trying to create this environment, or are you trying to just design the house, or, So I think sometimes it goes back to this fundamental aspects of a design and really be aware of like which area are you trying to solve for? Because I think, a lot of students are rather making beautifully rendered, perfect image. But when I sometimes look at it, there's no solution. And sometimes people who just have a few line drawings are actually solving way more problems than people who just are obsessed to create beautiful renders. I mean, I think those have its own space, but not. It's a very different aspects from concept design in game company. So I think that's definitely one of the aspects that I would, want to remind people.
Yeah, because I guess when you're working with concept design in a company, you're not just there to create beautiful pictures. You get a problem and you're asked to solve it.
Yeah, exactly.
So knowing that you can jump in and do that is very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with the mindset. Because when I check the portfolio, I can almost immediately tell if this person is solution oriented or just image oriented. So often it's image oriented, sadly. So it's very interesting when I get the work, because at first 2 seconds glance, everything looks so cool. It's like, oh my god, they're doing what I can't do.
I think it's a similar issue that we're facing with the 3D artists. So for character art, I'm also seeing a lot of pretty pictures on ArtStation and so on. But I mean, how is that model working in a game? Like, what was the thought process? Like, why did it decide on certain things? And it's I think it's important to understand like the technical ability of a person. Like, how well do you also work with other people? Like, are you just like, I'm just a powerhouse on my own. I'm just gonna do my own thing. Isolate yourself. That's not the way.
I don't want feedback.
No, I don't want feedback.
Okay,
I don't want to work with other teams. I'm going to stay in my own bubble. So that's very important to show that.
Make a solo game.
So not only like, okay, well, you're a great artist. Like, I think we all started out because we love art. And I mean, everyone eventually become, I guess, a concept artist or a character artist because they're good, or they have like a good artistic eye, but then also like how good are you at problem solving and other areas of expertise.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a wild, interesting ride, as all of these podcasts are. So make sure to go and watch the backlog of all the other podcasts. But Behind Massive Screens is going to go on a little break. We got stuff to do here at the studio, but make sure to like and subscribe and comment and stuff, and we might return earlier. Who knows? But again, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And see ya.